I didn't go to therapy because my marriage was failing. That's the lie I told everyone. And for a while, it was the lie I told myself too. I went because I couldn't sleep anymore. Because my chest felt tight for no reason. Because every morning I woke up already exhausted, like I had been fighting a battle all night and losing. I told my husband it was stress. Work. Life. Normal things. He nodded, kissed my forehead, and went back to scrolling on his phone, already halfway gone. The first thing my therapist noticed wasn't what I said. It was how I said it. "You keep minimizing," she told me during our third session. Her voice was calm, careful, like she was walking barefoot across broken glass. "Every time you mention your husband, you lower your voice. Almost like you're afraid he might hear you, even when he's not here." I laughed. Too quickly. Too loudly. "That's ridiculous," I said. "He's a good man." She didn't argue. She just nodded and wrote something down. That's how it started. Not with accusations. Not with warnings. Just silence, and notes. I had been married for 7 years. Long enough to know routines by heart. Long enough to predict his moods before he spoke. Long enough to sense when the air in the room was about to change, even if nothing obvious had happened. We didn't fight. People always think that's a good sign. But what we really did was avoid. Avoid topics. Avoid eye contact. Avoid ourselves. The love didn't end loudly. It thinned out. Quietly. Like oxygen leaking from a room with no windows. One afternoon, my therapist asked me a question that still echoes in my head. "When was the last time you felt chosen by him?" I opened my mouth. And nothing came out. My mind started flipping through memories like a panicked librarian searching for a book that didn't exist anymore. Vacations. Birthdays. Ordinary Tuesdays. Moments that should have felt like proof, but didn't. I finally said, forcing a smile, "We're adults. Love isn't supposed to feel dramatic all the time." She leaned back slightly. Not judgmental. Just observant. "Love doesn't need to be dramatic," she replied. "But it should feel present." That word. Present. I nodded, pretending I understood. But something inside me tightened. Because the truth was, I had been feeling invisible for so long that I mistook silence for peace. That night, I watched my husband sleep. His back turned to me, his breathing steady, unbothered. I wondered if he ever watched me like that. Or if I had slowly become background noise in my own life. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I didn't even move. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying my therapist's voice in my head. And for the first time, a thought crossed my mind that scared me more than loneliness. What if I'm not imagining this? If this is already hitting close to home, pause for a second and leave a like. You'd be surprised how many people are living inside relationships that look fine, and feel empty. The next session, she said something I wasn't ready to hear. "I'm not saying you should leave," she began carefully. "But I am saying, you're not safe emotionally where you are." I felt offended. Defensive. Almost angry. "Safe?" I repeated. "He's never hurt me." She met my eyes. "Not all harm leaves bruises." That was the moment I should have listened. That was the moment everything could have changed. But I didn't know yet, that this warning was only the beginning. I left that session feeling exposed. Not enlightened. Not empowered. Exposed. Like my therapist had turned on a light in a room I had spent years convincing myself was already bright enough. On the drive home, I rehearsed conversations in my head. Things I might say to my husband. questions that had been sitting in my throat for years. Do you still want me? Do you even see me? When did we stop touching like it meant something? None of them made it past my lips when I walked through the door. He was on the couch, TV on, volume low. Same position. Same posture. Same distant calm. Hey, he said, without looking up. Hey, I answered. That was it. That was the exchange. 2 syllables each, perfectly balanced. Perfectly empty. I went into the kitchen and started cooking dinner out of habit, not hunger. The rhythm of chopping vegetables had become a coping mechanism. If my hands were busy, my thoughts didn't scream as loudly. He didn't offer to help. He never did anymore. Somewhere along the way, I became the caretaker of everything that held us together: meals, schedules, emotional weather reports. While the pasta boiled, I remembered something my therapist said right before I left. You describe your marriage like a job you're afraid to quit. At the time, I'd brushed it off. But standing there, stirring sauce no one had asked for, I felt it sink into my bones. Dinner was quiet. Not tense. Just hollow. He talked about work. I nodded at the right moments. I asked follow-up questions like a good listener, like a good wife. He didn't ask me anything. Not how my day was. Not how I was feeling. Not why my eyes looked tired even though I'd slept 8 hours. After we ate, he stood up, rinsed his plate, and said, "I'm gonna shower." I watched him walk away and realized something terrifying. If he didn't come back, if he packed a bag and left that night, I wouldn't have been shocked. I would have been hurt. Devastated, even. But surprised? No. That realization sat heavy in my chest. Later, in bed, I tried something small. A test. I moved closer and rested my hand lightly on his arm. Not sexual. Not demanding. Just present. He stiffened. Almost imperceptibly. Then gently lifted my hand and placed it back on my side. "I'm tired," he said. "Long day." He rolled over. I stared into the darkness, my heart pounding louder than his breathing. That was when I finally allowed myself to feel the thing I'd been avoiding for years. Rejection doesn't always look like cruelty. Sometimes it looks like politeness. Sometimes it sounds like exhaustion. Sometimes it's wrapped in reasonable excuses that make you feel selfish for wanting more. The next therapy session, I told her about the night. About the hand. About the space between us that felt wider than the bed. She didn't react the way I expected. No shock. No outrage. Instead, she asked, "How did you feel when he moved your hand?" I swallowed. Embarrassed, I admitted. Like I'd asked for something I wasn't supposed to need. She nodded slowly. "And how often do you feel that way in your marriage?" The answer came instantly. "All the time." She leaned forward then, voice steady but firm. "Love shouldn't make you feel like a burden." That sentence broke something open inside me. I started talking. Really talking. About all the moments I'd learned to swallow, when he forgot important dates, when he dismissed my concerns as overthinking, when he made decisions without me and called it practicality. None of it was explosive. None of it was dramatic enough to justify leaving, at least not by the standards I'd grown up with. But stacked together, it formed a pattern. Neglect doesn't announce itself. It normalizes itself. Before I left, she said something that felt less like advice and more like a warning. Pay attention to how small you're becoming to keep this marriage comfortable. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and barely recognized myself. My posture was different. My eyes cautious. Like I was constantly bracing for disappointment. And for the first time, I asked myself a question that terrified me. What if staying is what's hurting me? If this part resonated, leave a comment, even just a dot. It tells me you're still here with me. The strangest thing about emotional erosion is that it doesn't feel like pain at first. It feels like confusion. I started questioning myself. Not him. Me. Was I too sensitive? Too needy? Was I romanticizing some imaginary version of marriage that didn't exist in real life? He wasn't abusive. He didn't yell. He didn't cheat, at least, not that I knew. He paid the bills. Showed up to family events. Posted pictures of us online on anniversaries with captions that made people comment, couple goals. So why did I feel like I was disappearing? One morning, I tried to talk to him. Not confrontational. Soft. Carefully curated. Do you ever feel like we're distant? I asked, stirring my coffee even though it was already mixed. He looked up from his phone, frowned slightly. No, he said. Why? The simplicity of that answer rattled me. I don't know, I replied. Sometimes it feels like we're roommates. He sighed. Not loudly. Not angrily. Just enough to make me feel inconvenient. You're overthinking again, he said. Everything's fine. Again. That word again. Overthinking. It became his favorite diagnosis for my discomfort. And slowly, I started to accept it. Every time something felt wrong, I assumed the problem was my perception, not our reality. That's when my therapist introduced a concept that made my stomach drop. Emotional gaslighting doesn't always involve lies, she said. Sometimes it's just consistent dismissal. That sentence followed me for days. I began paying attention. Not to what he said, but to what happened after I spoke. When I expressed sadness, the conversation shifted to how hard his day had been. When I voiced concern, I was told I was creating problems. When I asked for connection, I was met with logic. And logic always won. One night, we attended a friend's dinner party. He was charming. Attentive. His hand rested on my lower back. He laughed loudly, told stories, poured my wine without asking. People smiled at us like we were proof that love lasted. On the drive home, I sat in silence, my chest tight. What's wrong now? He asked, eyes still on the road. Nothing, I said. And that was the truth, because by then, nothing was the safest answer. At therapy the following week, I told her about the party. About how different he was in public. About how alone I felt sitting right beside him. She didn't hesitate. That's not inconsistency, she said. That's performance. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Performance meant intention. It meant awareness. It meant he knew how to show up, he just wasn't doing it for me. But why would he do that? I asked, my voice barely holding. She looked at me with a kind of sadness that scared me more than any harsh truth. Because as long as you doubt yourself, she said, he never has to change. That night, I went through my phone. Old messages. Old photos. I noticed how often I initiated conversations. Planned trips. Suggested date nights. Apologized after arguments I didn't start. I saw myself shrinking across time. The worst part wasn't realizing something was wrong. It was realizing how hard I'd worked to convince myself everything was right. I went to bed next to him and felt like I was sleeping beside a stranger who knew exactly how to keep me quiet. And for the first time, a darker thought surfaced. What else am I not seeing? If this is pulling something loose inside you, hit like and stay with me. Because once you start seeing clearly, you can't go back. There's a specific kind of fear that comes with clarity. Not panic. Not hysteria. Just a cold, Steady awareness that something you've trusted for years is not what you thought it was. I started paying attention in ways I never had before. Not obsessively. Quietly. I stopped filling silences. Stopped smoothing over tension. I let moments hang, just to see what would happen. What happened was, nothing. He didn't notice. One evening, I didn't make dinner. No announcement. No passive-aggressive comment. I just came home and sat on the couch, still in my coat. An hour passed. He stood up, glanced toward the kitchen, then back at the TV. "You didn't cook," he said. Not accusing. Observational. Like noting the weather. "No," I replied. A pause. "So, what do you want to do?" he asked. "What do you want to do?" Not "Are you okay?" Not "Why not?" We ordered takeout. He ate. I barely touched mine. Later that night, I brought something up I'd been avoiding for months. "I feel lonely," I said. My voice didn't shake. That's what scared me most. He turned to look at me, truly look at me, for the first time in days. "That's not fair," he said. "I'm right here." I nodded slowly. "Yes," I replied. "You are. That's the problem." His jaw tightened. "You're making things bigger than they need to be," he said. "You always do this. Always." Another word that made my chest ache. I felt something shift then. Not anger. Not sadness. Distance. "I don't think you hear me," I said quietly. He scoffed. A small sound. But sharp. "I hear you," he said. "I just don't agree with you." That was it. That was the moment the mask slipped. Because love listens even when it disagrees. Control debates. Indifference dismisses. He turned away, conversation over. And for the first time, I didn't chase him. I didn't explain myself better. I didn't apologize for needing more. I went to bed alone in every way that mattered. The next therapy session, I told her exactly what he said. I expected her to help me reframe it. To help me understand him. Instead, she said, that wasn't misunderstanding. That was invalidation. She let the words sit between us. "Do you feel respected in your marriage?" she asked. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. "No," I whispered. Saying it out loud felt like betrayal. Like I was breaking some unspoken vow to protect him. To protect us. She leaned forward slightly. "Respect is not optional," she said. "Without it, love becomes containment." That night, I lay awake thinking about all the times I'd been told my feelings were wrong, exaggerated, inconvenient. How often I'd accepted emotional crumbs and called it compromise. And that's when the most unsettling realization hit me. He wasn't unaware of my pain. He was comfortable with it. Because my discomfort required no action from him. If this part is making your stomach tighten, you're not alone. Leave a like and stay with me, the next part is where everything started to unravel. There are moments in life that feel small while they're happening. No screaming. No slammed doors. Just a quiet question that lands so precisely it cracks the foundation beneath you. It happened during a session I almost canceled. I was tired. Emotionally drained. I told myself therapy was just stirring things up, making me see problems that maybe didn't need to be seen. I sat on the couch, arms crossed, already preparing to defend my marriage again. My therapist listened. Let me talk in circles. Let me minimize. Let me protect him. Then she asked, calmly. "If nothing changes, can you live like this for the rest of your life?" The room went silent. I tried to answer logically. I listed practical things. Stability. History. Shared memories. The fact that we weren't miserable. I spoke like a lawyer arguing a case instead of a woman describing her life. She waited. No, I finally said. The word came out before I could stop it. My throat tightened. My eyes burned. No, I repeated. Louder this time. Truer. That was the first time I admitted it, not to her, but to myself. I couldn't survive decades of emotional starvation. I couldn't keep shrinking just to avoid conflict. I couldn't keep being the only one who noticed the distance. What scares you more? She asked gently. Leaving, or staying and disappearing? I didn't hesitate. Disappearing. That answer haunted me for days. At home, everything felt different. The walls. The routines. Even his voice. I saw how much of my energy went into keeping things smooth. How much silence I tolerated just to avoid being labeled difficult. One evening, he made a joke about me being too intense lately. He laughed. Expected me to laugh too. I didn't. What do you mean by that? I asked. He rolled his eyes. See, he said. This is what I mean. Something inside me snapped, not violently, but cleanly. I'm not intense, I said. I'm honest. And you don't like it. His smile faded. That's not true, he said. You're just reading into things again. Again. That word had lost all power. I'm done questioning my reality, I replied. My voice was steady. Almost calm. If you're unhappy with who I am now, maybe the problem is that I'm finally showing up. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. That night, I cried in the bathroom with the shower running so he wouldn't hear. Not because I felt weak, but because I felt awake. An awakening hurts when you've been asleep for years. In the next session, my therapist said something I'll never forget. People who benefit from your silence will always resist your voice. I knew then that something irreversible had begun. And what I didn't know yet was how far he would go once he realized I was no longer willing to stay quiet. If this is resonating, leave a comment, even just one word. It helps this story reach the people who need it. There's a shift that happens when someone senses they're losing control. Not love. Control. He became attentive in ways that felt unfamiliar. Compliments appeared out of nowhere. He asked how my day was. He suggested we go out to dinner, something we hadn't done in months. Anyone looking in from the outside would have thought, see? He's trying. But I felt it in my body. The timing was wrong. This version of him showed up only after I stopped chasing. After I stopped over-explaining. After I stopped filling the silence with apologies. One night at dinner, he reached across the table and took my hand. I feel like you've been distant, he said. I almost laughed. I've been paying attention, I replied. His brows furrowed. To what? To how much effort it takes to be here, I said. And how little you noticed until I pulled back. He sighed, leaned back. You're twisting things, he said. I'm trying now, isn't that what you wanted? That question carried weight. Guilt. Obligation. I remembered what my therapist had warned me about. Last-minute effort is not transformation. I didn't want effort, I said quietly. I wanted presence. The temperature at the table changed. At home, the tension thickened. He started keeping score. Every small gesture came with an unspoken expectation. If he cooked once, he expected praise. If he asked a question, he expected reassurance. When I didn't respond the way I used to, frustration leaked through his calm exterior. You've changed, he said one night. Yes, I answered. I had to. That was when the subtle punishments began. Silence that felt intentional. Withholding affection. A sharpness in his tone that never crossed into outright cruelty, just enough to make me doubt myself again. I brought this up in therapy. That's not reconciliation, she said. That's negotiation. Negotiation implied terms. Conditions. A power struggle. He doesn't want to lose you, I said. She met my eyes. No, she corrected gently. He doesn't want to lose access to you. That distinction settled heavily in my chest. One night, during an argument that never officially became one, he said something that froze me. You wouldn't survive without me, he said flatly. You're too emotional. There it was. Not shouted. Not dramatic. Just, revealed. I felt a strange calm wash over me. Maybe, I replied. But I'm not surviving with you. He looked stunned. Hurt. Angry. All at once. That was the first time I saw fear in his eyes. Because he realized something then. I wasn't begging anymore. I wasn't bargaining. I was preparing. If you've ever watched someone panic when they realize you're no longer controllable, hit like and stay with me. Because the next part is where the truth fully came into the light. It didn't come to me in a dramatic confession. No accidental text. No overheard phone call. The truth arrived quietly. Almost politely. Like it had been waiting for me to finally be ready. He left his laptop open on the dining table one afternoon. That alone wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the email notification that popped up on the screen. Miss you already. No name. Just the subject line. My heart didn't race. It slowed. Like my body knew before my mind could catch up. I told myself not to look. That privacy mattered. That trust was sacred. I repeated those thoughts like prayers, the same ones I'd used for years to protect a version of him that no longer existed. I clicked. The email wasn't explicit. That was the cruel part. It didn't need to be. Inside jokes. Familiar warmth. Emotional intimacy wrapped in innocence. And then I saw the timestamps. During our dinners. During my therapy sessions. During nights he said he was too tired to talk. I scrolled further. Weeks. Months. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat down slowly, like my legs no longer trusted me to stand. It wasn't sex. It was worse. It was attention. The thing I had been begging for, rationed to me, and freely given to someone else. That evening, I waited. Let him speak first. Let him lie if he chose to. How was your day? I asked. Fine, he said. Long. I nodded. Anyone miss you today? I asked casually. He looked up sharply. What? Just asking, I replied. The silence stretched. Finally, he sighed. You went through my email, he said. Not a question. I saw what you were already giving away, I answered. He didn't apologize. He explained. It's not what you think, he said. She understands me. There's no pressure. No pressure. Because she didn't need anything from him. Because she wasn't starving. So I'm pressure. I asked. He shrugged. You've been, a lot lately. There it was again. The minimization. The reframing. The blame. I stood up. My therapist warned me about this, I said softly. She said emotional neglect creates openings like this. That's when he snapped. Don't bring her into this, he said sharply. She's poisoning you against me. Poisoning. No. She was naming what he benefited from keeping invisible. I packed a bag that night. Not dramatically. Efficiently. Like a woman who had already grieved the relationship before it officially died. As I zipped the suitcase, he said something I'll never forget. You're throwing everything away over nothing. I turned to face him. If it were nothing, I said, you wouldn't have needed to hide it. I walked out before he could respond. If this part made your chest feel tight, you're not weak, you're awake. Leave a comment if you're still with me. Leaving wasn't the hardest part. Staying gone was. I slept on a friend's couch the first few nights. She gave me space. Too much space, maybe. The kind that lets your thoughts get loud. At night, I stared at the ceiling, replaying conversations like crime scenes, searching for the moment I could have stopped it all. That's the lie we tell ourselves after betrayal, that awareness equals responsibility. My therapist shut that down immediately. You didn't cause this, she said. You endured it. The difference mattered more than I realized. The messages from him started quickly. Long paragraphs. Emotional apologies wrapped in justification. He said he was confused. Lonely. Misunderstood. He said he never meant to hurt me. I noticed what he never said. I chose to ignore you. Instead, it was always it just happened. As if neglect were weather. One message stopped me cold. You're destroying our marriage. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. No, I typed back. I stopped pretending it was healthy. He didn't reply. The silence that followed felt different this time. Not punishing. Not strategic. Empty. In therapy, we talked about grief, not just of the relationship, but of the version of myself who believed love meant endurance. You're grieving an illusion, she said. And illusions can be painful to release. Some days, I missed him. Not him, but the idea of being chosen. Of having a home that felt safe. Of believing my effort mattered. Other days, I felt lighter than I had in years. Freedom isn't loud at first. It whispers. One afternoon, while folding laundry that wasn't his, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My shoulders were relaxed. My breathing deeper. I looked, present. That's when the anger came. Not explosive. Focused. Anger at how long I'd doubted myself. At how often I'd apologized for wanting basic care. At how easily he had rewritten reality to suit his comfort. But anger didn't consume me. It clarified me. I blocked his number after he sent one last message. You'll regret this. I smiled. Because for the first time, regret wasn't living in my future. If you've ever walked away from something that was quietly killing you, hit like. This part of the story is for survivors. People love to say, I realized too late. I used to say it too. But that sentence isn't true. Not really. Late implies failure. Delay. Missed opportunity. What actually happened was this. I realized when I was finally strong enough to survive the truth. If I had seen it earlier, I would have blamed myself. I would have tried harder. I would have shrunk more. I needed time to grow into the woman who could walk away without begging for permission. My therapist didn't ruin my marriage. She named what was already eroding it. She gave language to the ache I kept swallowing. She held up a mirror when I was still trying to decorate the cracks. The warning wasn't, leave him. The warning was, don't lose yourself. And I almost did. Today, my life is quieter. But it's honest. No one tells me I'm too much. No one benefits from my silence. No one confuses love with endurance. I still believe in commitment. I still believe in marriage. But I no longer believe that love requires self-betrayal. If you're listening to this and something inside you feels exposed, that's not weakness. That's recognition. And recognition is the beginning of freedom. Before you go, subscribe, leave a like, and tell me in the comments if this story reflected something you've lived, or something you're just starting to see. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is listen to the warning while there's still time. Months passed. Not cleanly. Not linearly. Healing never is. Some days I felt strong. Certain. Other days I cried over things that no longer mattered, a song, a scent, the way someone laughed like he used to before everything thinned out. But one thing never returned. The confusion. Clarity is a quiet gift. Once you have it, even pain makes sense. During one session, my therapist asked me to reflect on the beginning, not the honeymoon phase, but the first subtle shifts I'd ignored. I thought about the first time I felt small. The first time my needs were labeled excessive. The first time silence replaced curiosity. I didn't know it was abuse, I said slowly. Because it didn't look like what I was taught to fear. She nodded. Most emotional harm isn't loud, she said. That's why it lasts so long. I understood her warning now. Not as an attack on my marriage, but as an act of protection. She had seen the pattern before I had language for it. Neglect. Invalidation. Control disguised as calm. The realization didn't make me bitter. It made me precise. I started speaking differently. Choosing differently. Listening to the discomfort instead of negotiating with it. One afternoon, I ran into him at the grocery store. He looked older. Tighter. Like someone holding onto a story that no longer convinced even him. He smiled like we were still something. I hope you're happy, he said. I am, I replied. He studied my face, searching for hesitation. You changed, he said. I met his gaze. No, I said. I returned. He nodded slowly, like he finally understood something he couldn't undo. That night, I wrote in my journal, not about him, but about the woman I was becoming. A woman who trusted herself. A woman who didn't need permission to feel. A woman who knew that peace should never require self-erasure. If this story has mirrored something in your life, leave a comment. Even anonymously. Naming it is often the first step out.